I wasn't supposed to be home for another month. My business trip to London had been extended, or so I thought, until an unexpected client cancellation had me catching an early flight back to Miami, Florida. It was around 3 p.m. on a bright Wednesday when my Uber dropped me off in front of my gated mansion in Coral Gables. The palm trees swayed in the humid breeze, and my mind was already drifting toward a cold drink by the pool. But as soon as I punched in the gate code, I noticed something strange. My driveway was full. Not with my cars, but with an assortment of vehicles, a white minivan, a beat-up red Toyota, and a silver SUV I'd never seen before. My first thought was maybe my housekeeper had family visiting. But then I saw it, a woman in her late 50s, short blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, and a floral blouse, stepping out of my front door, holding my coffee mug. She froze when she saw me, as if I was the intruder. Can I help you?" she said in a sharp, entitled tone. I stared at her, trying to process the scene. "Yeah, this is my house. Who are you?" She laughed, actually laughed. "I'm Karen, head of the HOA. You're not supposed to be here until next month. This property was vacant, so I've been using it for a little neighborhood project." "A neighborhood project?" She had 2 more people walking in and out of my kitchen, carrying grocery bags. My blood pressure was spiking, but before I could react, Karen whipped out her phone and started dialing. "You're trespassing," she snapped. "I'm calling the police right now." I stepped closer. "Lady, this is MY Mansion. You're the trespasser." She ignored me, speaking loudly into her phone. "Yes, officer, there's a strange man trying to break into a property on Palm Vista Drive. Please hurry." I stood there in disbelief. Not only was this woman living in my home without permission, but she was calling the cops on me. 15 minutes later, I heard sirens. 2 Miami-Dade police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. The officers stepped out, one hand resting casually near his holster. Karen ran toward them like she was the victim. "That's him. He just showed up and is trying to kick me out of the property I've been maintaining for the HOA." The officers turned to me. "Sir, can we see some ID?" At that moment, I realized this wasn't going to be a quick conversation. I reached for my wallet, but before I could speak, Karen leaned toward the officers and whispered something I couldn't quite hear. The way their faces changed told me one thing: she had a plan. And I was about to find out just how deep this mess went. The humid Miami air felt heavier as the 2 officers stepped closer. One of them, Officer Ramirez, held out his hand. "Sir, let's start with your name and why you're here." I handed him my Florida driver's license. "Name's Daniel Foster. I own this property. Bought it 3 years ago. I just got back from a business trip." Ramirez glanced at my ID, then at Karen. "Ma'am, you said you've been here for 2 weeks?" Karen crossed her arms, chin tilted like she owned the sun and the sky. "Yes. The HOA received complaints about the lawn, the pool, and the overall appearance of the house. Daniel here left the property unattended. I had no choice but to step in, hire maintenance, and," she paused, shooting me a smirk, "supervise the home personally." "Supervise?" I asked, my voice rising. "You mean live in my mansion without permission, host your friends, and park your junk cars in my driveway?" Karen scoffed. "Excuse me? I was protecting the neighborhood's property values. Do you have any idea what an overgrown lawn does to the perception of a street like Palm Vista Drive?" Officer Ramirez frowned. "Sir, do you have proof this is your home?" I almost laughed. "You're standing on it. My name is on the deed, the mortgage, the insurance policy, the mail inside my mailbox." Karen suddenly interrupted, pulling a folder from her oversized purse. "I have documentation, officer." She handed it over. Inside were HOA violation notices, fake ones, with photos of my house from weeks ago, showing a few leaves in the pool and some tall grass. "The HOA bylaws allow temporary possession of a neglected property to ensure compliance," she said smoothly, as if she'd rehearsed every word. "That's not even legal." I snapped. "This isn't some abandoned shack, it's my home." But the officers didn't move. They exchanged a glance, then Officer Ramirez spoke again. "All right, here's what we're going to do. We'll need to verify ownership through the county records. Until then, nobody leaves the property." Karen's lips curled into a slow, satisfied smile. "That's fine by me." My fists clenched. Something told me this woman hadn't just decided to take care of my house. She had been planning this for a while, and I was about to learn just how far she'd gone. From the corner of my eye, I noticed one of her friends coming out of my garage, holding a box that looked suspiciously like it came from my private storage room. I took a step toward him, but Karen blocked my way. "Oh, you're going to love what we've done with the place." My jaw tightened. Whatever she'd done, I was going to undo it, and she was going to regret ever stepping foot on Palm Vista Drive. Officer Ramirez motioned for everyone to head toward the front door. Let's take a look inside, verify the situation. Karen strutted ahead like a tour guide showing off her latest listing. You'll see how much effort I've put in. Honestly, Daniel, you should be thanking me. I followed, my fists clenching tighter with every step. The moment I crossed the threshold, my stomach dropped. My grand foyer, once pristine marble and minimalist decor, now looked like a thrift store explosion. A cheap floral rug covered the marble, mismatched furniture cluttered the space, and family photos I didn't recognize lined the console table. Where's my furniture? I demanded. Karen smiled without turning around. Oh, it's in the garage. I thought something more welcoming would better suit the neighborhood aesthetic. We moved into the living room, where her friends lounged on my leather couches, sipping from my wine collection, bottles I'd been saving for years. A flat-screen TV blared daytime talk shows I'd never watch. Officer Ramirez's brow furrowed. Ma'am, is all this yours? Karen waved a hand. Temporarily, yes. I've been making the space livable. The HOA insisted I keep an eye on things. I stormed toward the kitchen. The stainless steel counters were covered in dirty dishes, empty pizza boxes, and a pile of unopened mail, my mail. My expensive chef's knives were scattered across the counter like they'd been used for some backyard barbecue. But the worst was yet to come. When we reached the upstairs hallway, I noticed my office door had been forced open. Inside, filing cabinets were pried apart, and papers were scattered across the floor. Karen's voice floated in behind me. I had to check for any documents that might prove abandonment. Abandonment? She was building a false narrative, one that, if she convinced the HOA and the police, could cost me my home. Officer Ramirez exchanged a quick, uneasy glance with his partner, Officer Mitchell. Mitchell asked, Ma'am, why was his office broken into? Karen didn't flinch. Because when a property's status is uncertain, the HOA has a responsibility. That's not a responsibility, I cut in, my voice sharp. That's theft. And you've been living in my mansion rent-free for 2 weeks. Karen folded her arms. We'll let the HOA lawyers decide that. But just as she finished, my eyes caught something through the master bedroom door, my walk-in closet. Half my clothes were gone. And the half that remained? A mess of hangers shoved aside to make space for her wardrobe. She wasn't just squatting. She was moving in. And from the smug way she glanced at me, I realized she wasn't planning on leaving anytime soon. Officer Mitchell stepped closer to the closet, his eyes scanning the racks of women's clothing where my suits used to hang. There were silk blouses, gaudy dresses, and an absurd number of leopard print cardigans. Even her shoes were lined up neatly on my expensive walnut shelving, the same shelves I'd had custom-built last year. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. You've literally moved in, Karen. This isn't supervision. This is occupation. Karen didn't even blink. I told you, the HOA? Stop hiding behind the HOA, I snapped. This is my private residence, not some communal clubhouse. Officer Ramirez raised a hand. All right, let's all calm down. Ma'am, you said the HOA authorized this. Do you have signed documentation? Karen hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, before pulling out another paper from her oversized bag. It was a letterhead that read Palm Vista HOA at the top. But from where I stood, the ink looked smudged, like it had been printed on a home printer. I stepped forward. May I see that? Ramirez glanced at me, then at Karen. If it's relevant, yes. Karen reluctantly handed it over. The moment I read it, I almost laughed. The so-called authorization letter was dated only 3 days before today. It claimed immediate action was needed to secure my property due to owner absence. It wasn't even signed by the HOA president, just by someone named Property Compliance Coordinator. I knew all the board members by name, and that title didn't exist. I looked Karen dead in the eye. You forged this. She put a hand on her chest in mock offense. That's a serious accusation, Daniel. I turned to the officers. Call the HOA president, his name's Mark Delaney. He'll tell you this is complete nonsense. Mitchell nodded and stepped into the hallway, pulling out his phone. Karen watched him go, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of worry cross her face. We moved downstairs, and that's when I noticed something I hadn't before, my art collection. The wall above the fireplace was empty, the custom frame hooks bare. Where's my painting? I demanded. Karen tilted her head. If you're talking about that abstract thing, it didn't match the vibe. I moved it somewhere safe. Safe where? Before she could answer, the garage door creaked open and one of her so-called friends stepped inside. In his hands was a rolled canvas, bubble-wrapped and taped up. Ramirez stepped forward. Sir, what's that? The man froze. Just storing it. Storing it from where? Ramirez pressed. The man glanced nervously at Karen, who gave the slightest shake of her head, as if warning him not to talk. I had had enough. I strode forward and ripped a corner of the bubble wrap open, revealing a familiar splash of red and gold, my $18,000 original piece from a Miami gallery. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, you want to explain why your friends are removing expensive property from this home?" Karen straightened her posture. "Because it's being protected. Daniel leaves valuables unsecured, and..." "Protected?" I barked. "From who? Yourself?" Mitchell returned from his call, his face unreadable. "I just spoke with Mr. Delaney, the HOA president. He says no such authorization was given, and there's no property compliance coordinator position in their organization." Karen's face went pale for just a second before she forced a laugh. "Well, of course he would say that. He's always been jealous of how much I care about this neighborhood." Mitchell ignored her and turned to Ramirez. "We might need to call this in." Karen's hands twitched at her sides. "You don't understand, I had to do this." I crossed my arms. "Had to do what? Live here? Drink my wine? Sell my art?" Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, there was no smugness in them. Just something calculating. "You're not going to like the answer to that, Daniel." Ramirez spoke into his radio, calling for another unit. Karen's friends started exchanging uneasy glances, and I realized whatever game she was playing, it wasn't over. Because this wasn't just about my house anymore. It was about me. 2 more Miami-Dade patrol units arrived within minutes, their tires crunching over my driveway's brick pavers. The flashing red and blue lights painted the palm trees outside like a warning sign. Neighbors had started peeking through their blinds. Palm Vista Drive loved drama, and this was the juiciest scene they'd had all year. Officer Ramirez stepped aside to brief the newcomers, while Mitchell motioned me toward the dining table. "We need to get a clear record of ownership and see if there's any legitimate paperwork tying her to this property." "Good," I said, pulling out my phone. "I've got the deed scanned in my email. Mortgage statements too." Karen, who was pacing like a caged tiger, suddenly stopped. "Daniel, maybe we should discuss this privately. You don't want the whole neighborhood hearing about your situation." My jaw tightened. "My situation?" She smiled sweetly, but there was poison in her tone. "Yes. You know, the financial issues you've been having. The unpaid HOA dues. The code violations." I almost laughed. "I pay my HOA dues a year in advance. And as for code violations, the only one here breaking any laws is you." One of the new officers, Sergeant Lewis, turned to Karen. "Ma'am, we've already confirmed with the HOA president that you have no authority here. You're going to need to start explaining why you're inside this home." Karen's lips curled into a smirk. "Because I'm protecting an investment." That made me pause. "Investment? What are you talking about?" She reached into her bag again, this time pulling out a manila folder stuffed with papers. She spread them on the table like she was about to close a real estate deal. "This is a purchase agreement, for this property." The table went silent. I grabbed the top page and scanned it. My name was on it, but not as the buyer. As the seller. And the signature next to mine, supposedly authorizing the sale, looked like a bad imitation of my handwriting. "You forged a contract," I said flatly. Karen shrugged. "Prove it." Ramirez picked up the papers, flipping through them. "Where'd you get this, ma'am?" "I drafted it after Daniel and I had a discussion about him moving on from this place," Karen replied, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "He was under stress, he needed cash, and I made him an offer." "That never happened," I shot back. But Karen didn't miss a beat. "Unfortunately, he backed out after I'd already begun the process, transferred utilities, updated mailing addresses. My lawyer is prepared to take this to court." I stared at her. "Utilities? You changed my accounts." She gave me a mock sympathetic look. "Oh, you didn't notice? Your electric bill has been coming to me for 2 weeks. Water too. I even set up a temporary forwarding address with the post office. Thought you'd appreciate someone handling things while you were away." My pulse pounded in my ears. This wasn't just squatting, she was building a legal case to try and steal my home out from under me. Mitchell stepped aside to make another phone call, while Ramirez leaned in toward me. "Daniel, if what she's saying about utilities is true, this could get complicated. Paperwork changes like that can create confusion about occupancy rights, even if they're fraudulent." I kept my voice low. "You're telling me she might actually get away with this?" Ramirez's expression was grim. "Not if we get ahead of it." Before I could respond, Mitchell returned. "I just spoke with the HOA president again. He says Karen's been pushing for months to gain control of certain properties in the neighborhood. She's been filing bogus complaints, photographing homes without permission, even sending letters to owners claiming they were in violation of HOA bylaws." Ramirez turned to Karen. Ma'am, this isn't looking good for you. Karen, still perfectly composed, slipped her sunglasses back on. You can try to intimidate me all you want, but I've done my homework. I know the loopholes. And when this is over, Daniel, you won't have a leg to stand on. Then she looked me dead in the eye and added, because this house? It should have been mine all along. The room went cold. Ramirez called for the officers to start documenting every inch of the property. Karen's friends started looking nervous, slowly gathering their things. But I knew she wasn't finished. And from the way she was smiling as she sat down at my dining table, I had the sinking feeling that she still had one last card to play. The sound of police boots echoed across my marble floors as the officers began photographing every room. They documented the piles of Karen's belongings, my missing furniture, the broken office lock, and even the opened wine bottles. Ramirez stayed close to me while Mitchell kept a watchful eye on Karen, who now sat calmly at my dining table like she was hosting afternoon tea. Sergeant Lewis approached with a clipboard. Daniel, we're going to need you to list every item that's missing or damaged. We'll also request any receipts, appraisals, or insurance documents. I nodded, my mind racing. I've got digital records of everything. I can email them to you tonight. Karen sipped from her oversized tumbler. I realized with disgust it was my expensive Yeti mug, and spoke without looking up. You're wasting your time. All of this will be sorted out in civil court, and when it is, Daniel will owe me for the improvements I've made to this property. Improvements? I scoffed. You trashed my home. She set the tumbler down with a clink. New curtains, better lighting in the living room, fresh paint in the kitchen. You're welcome. Before I could reply, one of the officers came from the garage holding a box. Sergeant, you might want to see this. They set it on the table and opened the flaps. Inside were neatly stacked envelopes, all addressed to me, bank statements, property tax notices, and personal letters, all unopened. My stomach turned. That's my mail. You've been stealing my mail. Karen shrugged. Forwarding it. Technically, since I'm maintaining the residence, I needed to stay informed about its affairs. Lewis's voice hardened. That's a federal offense, ma'am. Karen didn't flinch. Not if I have occupancy rights. Ramirez muttered under his breath, she's been reading case law. Mitchell returned from the backyard, holding something in his hand, a small security camera. Daniel, do you have outdoor cameras? Yes, 3, I said. One by the gate, one by the front porch, and one overlooking the pool. He set the camera down. This one's been disabled. The memory card is missing. Karen's smile returned, slow and deliberate. Wouldn't want any false accusations flying around. Lewis stepped forward. Ma'am, tampering with security equipment is. But Karen cut him off, her voice sharper now. Save it. You think you've got me cornered, but you don't. Because if you search the county records right now, you'll see my name listed as having a lien on this property. I froze. A what? She leaned back in the chair, enjoying my shock. 2 weeks ago, I filed a claim against you for unpaid HOA fines. The county processed it. That lien gives me leverage, enough to make a judge question who really controls this house. Mitchell frowned and pulled out his phone. A few minutes later, he confirmed it. She's not lying. There's an active lien on the property, though it's pending review. I slammed my hand on the table. Those fines are fake. I never even received notice. Karen tilted her head. Oh, I sent them. Certified mail. But I guess they must have gotten lost. I realized instantly, she'd intercepted them along with all my other mail. Ramirez's voice was tense now. Sergeant, we might be looking at fraud, mail theft, and property interference. If we can prove the lien is bogus, we can move faster. Lewis nodded. Then we need to hit this from 2 sides, get her out of the house and get that lien removed. Karen smirked, clearly unshaken. Do your worst. I've been preparing for this for months. And Daniel, the longer you fight me, the more expensive this will get for you. For the first time since I walked through my own gate, I understood the depth of her plan. She wasn't just squatting, she was using every loophole, every trick, every shady tactic to force me into either giving up the house, or paying her to leave. And as the officers continued their work, I knew one thing for sure. If I didn't outsmart her soon, I might actually lose my mansion, not to some burglar, but to the HOA Karen of Palm Vista Drive. That night, after the police left with their mountain of photographs and evidence, I sat in my now half-empty living room, staring at the mess. The echo of my own footsteps reminded me that I wasn't just fighting for a building, I was fighting for my home. Karen was still inside the property when I left. The police couldn't legally drag her out yet because of the lien and her bogus occupancy claim. That burned me more than anything. I could see her shadow moving past the blinds, like she was parading her victory. I knew one thing, I needed proof. Not just that she forged documents, but that this was a pattern. If she'd done this before, her credibility would collapse. So I called the one person who always came through for me in Miami, Victor Morales, a private investigator I'd hired once to track down a shady contractor who skipped out on a renovation job. Victor had a nose for scams and the patience of a bloodhound. When Victor picked up, I didn't waste time. "Vic, I've got a squatter situation. Name's Karen, last name still unknown, but she's claiming she's entitled to my house. Think you can dig?" He gave a low whistle. "A squatter in Palm Vista? That's gutsy. Text me a picture, and I'll start pulling threads." I hung up, sent him the best shot I had from my phone, Karen standing smugly on my porch while the cops questioned me. 2 hours later, Victor called back. "Buddy, you're not gonna believe this. Her name's Karen Delaney. She's been involved in 3 property disputes in Florida in the last 5 years. Naples, Sarasota, and Tampa. Same MO every time, claims unpaid dues, files liens, moves in under the radar, makes it a nightmare for the owner to evict her. In 2 of those cases, she walked away with settlements." My stomach nodded. "Settlements? You mean the owners paid her to leave?" "Exactly. She knows the court process drags on, so she wears M down financially. Oh, and get this, in Naples, she tried the same stunt on a retired couple. They ended up selling the house just to get out of the mess." I clenched my fists. "Not this time." Victor chuckled. "Then you're gonna love the cherry on top. She's not even a legit HOA board member. The HOA president told me she volunteers to assist with enforcement, but she's never been elected or officially hired. She's been pretending she has authority." That was it, the crack in her armor. If I could get her fraud on record, I could rip apart her whole lien game. The next morning, I called Ramirez. "Officer, I've got intel. Karen's got a history, 3 similar cases, fake HOA authority, the works. Can we use this?" Ramirez sighed. "If we can connect it directly to her actions here, it strengthens your case. But you'll still need to get that lien overturned in court. That's your fastest path to eviction." That's when Victor texted me again, "Meet me at the Miami-Dade Courthouse archives at noon. You'll want to see this." When I arrived, Victor was waiting with a stack of manila folders. "Here's your golden ticket," he said, flipping one open. Inside were notarized statements from her previous victims, police reports, and in one case, an arrest record for trespassing. I felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. If the judge sees this, she's done. Victor grinned. "Better move fast, though. People like her don't wait around. If she thinks you're building a case, she'll make her next move." Right on cue, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered. Karen's voice came through, silky and mocking. "Daniel. I hear you've been busy. That's cute. But you should know, you're already too late." The line went dead. And in that moment, I knew, she had just set her next trap. The morning after Karen's cryptic phone call, I woke up to a flurry of messages on my phone. Not from friends, from strangers. The first one read, "Bro, why are you blasting your HOA on Facebook? This is wild." Another said, "Daniel, did you really threaten that woman? This post is everywhere." My heart sank. I opened Facebook and found a public post in a local community group, written under my name. It read, "The HOA is corrupt. Karen Delaney is a thief and I'll make sure she regrets ever stepping onto my property. I don't care if I have to break the law, she's going down." Attached was a picture of me from my driveway, taken the night the police came, looking furious. It was cropped just right to make me look like I was yelling at her. My hands tightened around the phone. "She's framing me," I whispered. I called Victor immediately. "She's making fake posts in my name. This is identity theft." Victor didn't sound surprised. "Classic Karen move. She's trying to make you look unstable so if it goes to court, she can argue you're harassing her. Screenshot everything. Save the URLs. And lock down your accounts before she does worse." But she wasn't done. An hour later, I got an email from my bank's fraud department. Someone had tried to log in 3 times from an IP address traced to my own house. "She's inside my network," I muttered. My smart home system, Wi-Fi locks, cameras, thermostat, everything ran through that same network. If she had access, she could lock me out digitally too. I drove straight to the mansion and confronted her at the gate. She was in the garden, wearing my old sun hat, humming like she didn't have a care in the world. "Cut the crap, Karen," I yelled. "You're impersonating me online and trying to break into my bank." She tilted her head with mock innocence. "Daniel, why would I do something like that? Unless, you're just trying to create a distraction because you know I've filed for a restraining order." I froze. "A what?" She pulled a folded document from her apron pocket. "Filed it this morning. Says here you've been threatening me. Oh look, screenshots from Facebook. And witnesses? Why yes, the HOA board. They'll testify you're aggressive. I felt my pulse hammer in my ears. She had turned the fake post into evidence against me, and she had backup willing to lie for her. Ramirez called me that evening. Daniel, I need to warn you, if that restraining order is approved, you won't be able to come within 500 feet of the property. She'd have exclusive control until it's resolved. I sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel. She wasn't just squatting anymore, she was trying to legally erase me from my own home. And judging by the smug look on her face earlier, she thought she was already winning. But Karen didn't know I had one ace left, something she couldn't fake or twist. And I was about to use it. Victor's words kept replaying in my head, people like her always slip up, you just have to be ready to catch it. My ace wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't even a legal document. It was a camera. See, when I renovated the mansion 2 years ago, I had a contractor install a second set of security cameras, hidden, wired directly into a local backup drive that didn't connect to the main Wi-Fi network. I'd put them there in case my smart system ever got hacked. I'd almost forgotten they existed. If those cameras were still working, they might have caught every single thing Karen had done since she moved in. There was one problem, the backup drive was in the basement utility room, inside the mansion. And thanks to Karen's restraining order stunt, if I got caught stepping foot on the property before the hearing, she could have me arrested. I told Victor about the cameras. His eyes lit up. If we can get that footage, it's game over. I can make sure it's admissible in court. But you can't go in there yourself, you need someone she won't suspect. I thought for a moment, then called Tina, my housekeeper. She'd worked for me for years, and Karen had no reason to see her as a threat. Tina, I need you to do me a huge favor, I said. There's a black box in the basement utility room, about the size of a shoebox, plugged into the wall. Can you grab it and bring it straight to me? Don't tell Karen what it is. Tina agreed, but the plan nearly collapsed in the first 5 minutes. She texted me, Karen followed me downstairs. She's asking why I'm here. What do I say? I replied fast, tell her you're checking the air filter. Keep calm. 15 minutes later, Tina pulled up in her old Toyota, hands trembling as she handed me the box. She kept staring at me, Mr. Daniel, like she knew I was hiding something. I didn't waste time. Victor and I plugged the drive into his laptop in his office. The first clip we opened was from 2 nights after I left for my trip, Karen walking in with 2 men I didn't recognize, carrying duffel bags. They went straight to my master bedroom. Another clip showed her on the phone, pacing, saying, the lien will scare him. Once the restraining order is in place, he's finished. And if he fights, we've got the posts ready. Victor grinned. She just admitted the posts were planned before you even threatened her. That's premeditated fraud. But the best was yet to come. We found footage of her rifling through my mail, opening bank statements, flipping through my personal documents. That was federal mail theft. This, Victor said, tapping the screen, isn't just civil court stuff anymore. This is criminal. We bring this to Ramirez tonight, and she's done. I felt a rush of relief, until my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of Tina's car in my driveway, taken just minutes earlier. The caption read, "Cute trick, Daniel. Too bad I saw everything. Now you've broken the restraining order, enjoy your night in jail." My stomach dropped. She wasn't bluffing, she was already one step ahead. And then, the sound of sirens started getting closer. The wail of sirens cut through the Miami night like a warning bell. I stood frozen in my living room, phone in hand, heart pounding. The text was clear, Karen had set me up to break the restraining order. If the police found me on the property now, I could be arrested. But I couldn't just run. Not after all this. Just then, the front door burst open. Officer Ramirez, Sergeant Lewis, and a few backup officers rushed in, their faces grim but determined. "Daniel, you're safe. We're here to protect you," Ramirez said. Behind them, Karen appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing that same smug smile. But this time, it was different, there was a flicker of panic in her eyes. "Karen Delaney," Ramirez said firmly, "you're under arrest for mail fraud, trespassing, and filing false liens." She blinked, caught off guard. "You don't have proof." Ramirez held up a USB drive. "This is video evidence from your own mansion. You can't deny you were living here without permission, stealing mail, and plotting against Mr. Foster." Karen's shoulders sagged just slightly. Then, with a bitter laugh, she said, "You think this is over?" Before anyone could respond, Victor stepped forward, holding a stack of documents. "Actually, it's not just about Karen. We've uncovered a much bigger problem. She's been using forged HOA documents to target several homeowners in Miami. This isn't just a personal vendetta. It's a scam. Ramirez nodded. We're launching a full investigation. Karen's face twisted in rage. You'll regret this. But the room was silent, charged with the weight of justice finally catching up. As Karen was led away in handcuffs, I looked around my broken home, the place she tried to steal, manipulate, and ruin. It was going to take time to fix everything she'd done, but one thing was clear, I was not going down without a fight. And if Karen ever thought she could return, she had another thing coming. Because this mansion, my home, belonged to me. The end.